This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition. Short Stories Unhinged, Part 1. When Stephanie hung up the phone in her three-person suite that she shared with her lifelong best friends, True and Renni, Renni said, "What was CT on?" Stephanie said, "Girl, he was tripping because I'm not coming home for spring break. I guess he was trying to get up." True said, "That man got it bad for you, Steph. Why you don't just tell him you're not interested and put him out his damn misery?" Steph said, "Girl, please. I'm sure he'll find himself a nice little church lady eventually. As long as he stays in his lane, we could be friends. Take it from me. You never cut a nigga like CT off as long as there's something that he can do for you. You never know how that connection might come in handy in the future." Rennie said, "I know that's right. So what's the move, Steph?" Before Stephanie could expound on the plans that she had for her and her girls for spring break, the phone in their dorm room rang. The caller ID showed that it was none other than Rennie's big brother, Lawrence Jr., also known as LJ. When Rennie answered, LJ said, "Sis, so are you driving or flying home for spring break?" Rennie said, "Neither. I'm staying right here." LJ said, "Rennie, don't play with me. I'm not new to this, young. Where y'all going instead of bringing y'all hot at?" Rennie cut him off and said, "Bro, why I gotta be all of that? I told you I'm TAing for my chem professor. You know, the one that I'm going to be working for over the summer doing research. He has some pre-work that he needs help with over spring break, so I'm going to be here doing that. I need the money." True and Stephanie just looked at each other smirking. They knew Rennie was going to be working with Dr. Indugal the first 2 days of spring break, but after that, they were taking a little road trip to South Beach with some New Orleans rappers. They were going to soak up all the sun, sand, and sailing that they could stand on the hot boys' dime. They couldn't wait to pop out in their bikinis and short shorts and tear up the beaches and the designer stores. They planned to pop bottles and shake their behinds for 4 days and 3 nights aboard a private yacht and in the penthouse suite of an expensive hotel. Now, True was the quiet friend, laid back, reserved, smart as a whip, and always willing to just go with the flow. She loved to play the background, so whenever things went down, no one ever looked at her. On the surface, she appeared to be entirely too innocent to have been involved in any shenanigans. But if there was a tape, she'd be right on it, all up in the mix. Stephanie was the streetwise friend, way ahead of her time and always with a trick up her sleeve. While she was always low key, she was also always ready to pop off. From the outside looking in, she was the last one that anyone would ever suspect of dirt. But if there was dirt, she was the ringleader. She had the plan, she brought the shovel, and the alibis. And when the plan was executed and the dirt was done, she'd be standing there, completely clean, and appearing completely innocent. And then, true to form, she wouldn't be telling anybody anything about a darn thing. Because her name was Bennett, and she wasn't in it. And then, there was Rennie. If there was drama, she was not only in it, she was the drama. Her family and friends knew that if something went wrong, Rennie wasn't only the cause, but she was the victim and the villain. She was constantly trying to assert her independence and autonomy, which always resulted in her needing to be rescued. So wrapping up their sophomore year at Louisiana State University, LSU, the trio had thoroughly enjoyed becoming acquainted with Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and the surrounding parishes, and their men. Being North Carolina born and raised, Louisiana was a welcome change. It provided them all with an opportunity to spread their wings, get out of their older siblings' shadows, and establish their own identities. So once Rennie wrapped up her 2 days of work, the crew tore up South Beach. They had the rappers blowing bags, popping bottles, and begging for a taste. Following Stephanie's lead, the young ladies managed to get everything that they wanted while giving up nothing. Stephanie's game was so tight that the men weren't even mad that they didn't get the ultimate prize. They were just glad to have the beautiful young women on their arm. And Stephanie made it her business to find the rappers some other young ladies who were willing participants and ready to oblige the rappers' fantasies, if you will. When spring break was over, the ladies returned to LSU, weighed down with bags, hung over, and tired as all get out. And when they got to their dorm, They were greeted by the RA with an urgent message for Renni. She needed to get home immediately. Not knowing what the issue was and unable to get any of her family on the phone, the three girls dropped everything, jumped in Stephanie's car, and headed for North Carolina. When they arrived 11 hours later, LJ was pissed, but he was also worn out. He said, "Come on, Renni, I've been trying to reach you for days. I thought you said you were staying at LSU for spring break." Renni said, "What's going on, LJ? I tried to call and couldn't get through. I'm here now. Tell me what's going on." Then LJ gave her the news. Their mother had a massive heart attack and died nearly 4 days before. Renni was devastated. But the truth was, even if she did get the message earlier, there wouldn't have been anything that she could have done because her mother died immediately. There was no lingering. There wasn't any time to even say goodbye. Arrangements had already been made, and all three of the girls' families had already contacted LSU to have the girls excused until after the services. Renni was inconsolable. She felt guilty about not being where she said she would be, about not getting home sooner, not being there for her mother in her last hours, and she felt like an orphan. She had already lost her father before she was even born to prostate cancer, and her older siblings, Lauren and LJ, had been instrumental in her life, helping her widowed mother raise her. So she was spoiled, selfish, and often insufferable. But they loved her even the more because they saw her as their father's final gift to the family. Her siblings did everything that they could to comfort her to no avail. Her friends and their families were right there as well. Stephanie's mother, Miss Cheryl, and her older sister, Angela, were like family to Renni. Miss Cheryl and Renni's mother and Angela and LJ had all been best friends before Renni and Stephanie were even born. So the two were raised together. By the time the funeral was held, Renni was a shell of herself. She was all cried out and no longer even willing to talk about her loss. She was ready to get back to LSU. And the entire 11-hour drive, the only thing she wanted to talk about was catching up on her missing work and going to New York City with her chemistry professor, Dr. Ndugu, to work on his research over the summer. True and Stephanie were flabbergasted, but they knew Renni. They knew she would throw herself into something else to distract herself from her pain, from her loss, and from the self-inflicted guilt for not being there when her mother died. They were just glad that she was throwing herself into school and not into drugs, alcohol, or men. Over the next few weeks, Renni threw herself into wrapping up the semester and preparing for her trip to New York City. And when the semester wrapped up, True and Stephanie headed back to North Carolina, and Renni headed to New York with Dr. Ndugu and the team. Renni made it a point to contact her family and friends to give them an update each week while she was in New York. She was enjoying her research, running around New York City with the other TAs, and spending quite a bit of time with Dr. Ndugu during their off hours. Eventually, Stephanie became suspicious, and she said, "Do you think it's a good idea for you and Dr. Ndugu to spend so much time together? Don't they have activities for the TAs to do and then things for the professors to do that are separate?" Rennie said, "Of course they do, but the stuff they have for the TAs to do is just childish and boring. Not to mention, Dr. Ndugu invites me, so I go." "I don't see the issue." Stephanie said, "Don't professors usually take their families and attend those functions and events with their spouses, not their TAs?" "Girl, I hope you're not sleeping with that man. First of all, he is too old for you. Second of all, he is married," Rennie said defensively. "He is not that much older than me. And if he married, I can't tell, because he ain't said nothing to me about no wife. He don't even wear a wedding ring." And just as quickly as Rennie started talking about the time she was spending with Dr. Ndugu, she stopped talking about the time she was spending with Dr. Ndugu. When she and True had an opportunity to catch up, she said, "Yeah, Stephanie is so judgmental. I was simply telling her about some of the different events and functions that I was going to, and she was acting like I was trying to steal somebody's man or something. It's not my fault Dr. Ndugu enjoys my company." True said, "Well, you know how she is about marriage and cheating, especially after everything that happened with her parents." Stephanie had confided in her best friends that her father had an extramarital affair with another woman and had 2 children with that woman. She also told them that as a result of that affair, Her father and one of her sisters was killed by the other woman. So one thing Stephanie didn't play about was adulterous affairs. Rennie told True, well, I feel like another woman can't break up a home that's happy. I wouldn't intentionally go out and try to mess with another woman's husband, but if he's pursuing me instead of taking care of home, then clearly there's something wrong at home. She said, well, before you get in too deep, just make sure you know where he and his wife stands. And make sure you know what his intentions are. Rennie said, of course, it's nothing serious. We just having a good time. We enjoying New York. It's like we both on vacation while working. Despite all of Rennie's assurances that her and Dr. Indugu were just co-workers and friends enjoying their summer in New York and that there wasn't necessarily anything untoward going on, by the end of the summer, Rennie and Dr. Indugu were a little too friendly. Dr. Indugu became the only person Rennie was even discussing the death of her mother with, while Dr. Indugu was seeing Rennie as a student and a mentee. Rennie was seeing Dr. Indugu as a love interest. She was head over heels.